Hey gays, how are you all today? My name is Saint Trey Wooden. I am a staff writer with Gay Magazine. And gays, today we have Doug Spearman. Doug Spearman is an actor, a writer, and a director best known for his role as Professor Chance in Counter in the groundbreaking series Noah's Ark and its feature films Jumping the Broom and Noah's Ark the movie, as well as the pandemic short Noah's Ark The Rona Chronicles. His career spans television, film, and theater with appearances in shows like Star Trek, Voyager, Charmed, Girlfriends, and The Drew Carey Show, as well as films like Cradle to the Grave and Any Day Now. Behind the camera, Doug has written and directed two feature films, Hot Guys with Guns and From Zero to I Love You, and worked as creative director for networks including ABC, NBC, CBS, BET, and Logo. His career has earned him multiple honors, including awards from the Human Rights Campaign, the NEA, and the Jordan Rustin Coalition. Welcome to the amazingly talented, and if I may add, my favorite of the Fab Four from the
Oh,
Noah's Ark series, Doug Spearman. Hey, Doug.
hello. Greetings from New Orleans.
We are so happy to have you here with us today. And we got a lot of questions, so let's jump in and get all the tea. So Gay Magazine, we recently reported that Noah's Ark cracked the top 10 on Paramount Plus.
Top five.
Top five. Oh, excuse me. Top
Mhm.
five.
Yeah.
Get me together. The top five. What were your reactions? How did you feel about this recognition for such an iconic show?
Well, I mean, it took a while, first of all, for us to be considered iconic. And it took, I mean, for that label to be applied to the show. I mean, that only comes with history and endurance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was extraordinary. I remember when we were shooting the last movie, Christian and I were talking, and he said, "I hope we get our 15 minutes this time." And that Andy Warhol expression, that saying that everybody is famous for 15 minutes at least. And when the show first came out, I mean, first of all, the internet wasn't what it is now, and it was a lot more, things were a lot more analog, and it was paper, and we got torn up a lot. We got torn up a lot. To the point where, like, there was this one guy who was the only consistent reviewer. He was a blogger. I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if he's even still alive. But I mean, woo, he opened the door, and we got new holes in places we didn't know we needed new holes. And this time around, to have the Atlantic do an article about Black queer media was extraordinary, and to have that billboard that was up on Paramount's building in Times Square was extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think when you're a fan of something, you're a fan of something. I mean, like, I have shows that I don't care what they do, I'll watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But for us to have held up the test of time and have this this amazing amount of love. I mean, we're all a little gunshot. You know what I mean? You put stuff out there as an artist, you feel very naked, and people tend to have their opinions. And I have been, people will say some stupid stuff to you, and you just have to kind of keep going. But this time, I mean, it was extraordinary. We definitely got our flowers this time.
And well deserved. I remember being a baby gay and having my DVDs and sneaking to watch on Logo when the show would come on.
Why did you have
And
to sneak?
I had to sneak because I wasn't out yet. And my family, we had two cable boxes. There was one in the living room, and then there was one back in my room. And I could watch when pretty much everyone was away or if people were sleeping. And I hated that, but it was also an opening for me to really start to understand my queerness in a way that was recognizable to me and that I was able to identify with, because here you had black gay men, as opposed to, like, Queer as Folk and the L Word and a lot of the other shows that were coming on that portrayed, you know, um, queer life at that time. But yeah, I had to sneak, but I'm glad I did sneak.
Were your parents, do you think your parents would have had a problem?
um,
Or how old were you?
oh gosh, I was in high school, middle school, high school, yeah, when I first started watching the show. And now I don't think so. Now knowing knowing how they feel and love me, I don't think they would have a problem today. But back then, I'm pretty sure there would have been some choice words, right? They just weren't where they are today. The world has moved, and so have they. And I think they understand more through my life. My mom passed away, but my stepdad is still around,
Mhm.
and you know, we have great conversations, around these things, and there's nothing but respect and love from that
Good,
angle. So
good.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
when I was growing up, like, I am significantly older than you, and I always credit Billy Crystal with
Mm,
with allowing me to find a path forward as a gay man. I mean, when I was in junior high school and high school, the only gay man you ever saw on TV was a character named Jody on a show called Soap. It was a huge hit on
mm.
ABC. It was a nighttime comedy soap opera, and Billy Crystal played this gay character. And one of the reasons I went into advertising and became a commercial director was because Billy Crystal's character, that's what he did on Soap. So, I mean, I get looking for anything that would be just a sort of a rope to hold on and pull yourself through your life. I mean, I've actually
Yeah.
told Billy Crystal that, like, I am who I am because I got to see him bravely and honestly and proudly, be somebody. I mean, we had books. I read a lot of novels to figure out how to be gay. And my parents read that. My mom in particular loved gay novels. So if I read
Oh,
one, I gave it to her, and that started when I was 13.
I love that, and I echo something similar to Patrick a few years ago about him sort of providing that space, right, of this sort of like queer awakening for me, and then it really opened up a lot more, to reading Essex Hemphill and Elin Harris, and really starting to explore what that meant, to even going starting to read Baldwin as a teenager, and in high school. I love that. I love that Billy Crystal was your queer awakening. I would never have I would never have penned that, but that's
Well, there was nothing
amazing.
there, I
Yeah.
mean, and I certainly didn't want to grow up to be Charles Nelson Riley or Paul Lynde. I mean, like, when you think about, like, what you saw, what I got to see, what I grew up with, there were some very limited choices. And Billy Crystal seemed
Yeah.
like he seemed like a real three-dimensional person who had a positive life. I
Yeah.
love the character.
And And also, like, the characters back in those days, I'm pretty sure they were portrayed in a much different way or stereotyped in one way as being very effeminate or um, sort of flamboyant and whatnot. Because I even remember even seeing like gay characters on certain shows and in movies growing up. I think about like Low Down Dirty Shame, right? Like, and we see the character like Wayman, right? And the portrayal of him as very over the top flamboyant, and sort of trying to pigeonhole or tether gays or queer folk to sort of one sort of model.
Mhm.
So I think y'all even a opened up a bottle to where folks can see the numerous sort of aspects of black queer life with the portrayal of the many different characters, right? Like there's we all have a friend group with an Alex, and we all have a friend, we all have that one friend who's Ricky. Then we also have the friend who's Chance, right? And then there's Noah, who we all have as that friend. So I thought that was really beautiful. I did want to touch on something that you did say about sort of the recognition, right, and how you all got to where you are today after sort of years and sort of folks not really believing in you in the beginning. I know Patrick. We had a chance to interview him, and he has talked about not getting as many opportunities as other directors, or really the recognition for this work. And with you being a part of that, how do you feel? How do you feel about this in terms of Patrick's creative genius and just sort of recognition within the industry?
You mean from my perspective about Patrick's career or my
Yeah.
perspective on
So
my career?
your perspective on what Patrick said about not getting as many opportunities as other directors, or the recognition for Noah's Ark, right? Like, and with you being a part of that series, how do you feel
I
about
think it's
that?
true.
Those
I I
comments.
I think it's true. I think, when we first even before the first episode, back then, like, being openly gay was still considered a career killer. And before the show, I mean, I had been out. I saw a friend of mine get outed on the cover of the National Enquirer, and I said, I'm never ever going to let that happen to me. So I've always had an open gay life. I mean, I lived in LA, uh, you know, for 10 years before 12 years before the show came out. And so I wasn't, but there was a discussion when we first started, even before the first episode, about like sort of masking or not talking about being gay. And
Mm,
because I think there were some, they wanted to, I mean, they couched it in putting it in the idea of that we should create some kind of mystery about who is and who isn't in the cast. And I'm like, look, all you got to do is Google me and you know who I am, you know?
right.
But also, because it's television and people tend to get typecast in television more than they do when they have careers in film on either side of, as a writer, director, or as an actor. And I think when the show first started, there was, I mean, I had an agent walk up to me at a cocktail party and said, stop doing gay stuff. I mean, you shake your head now, but like literally, you have to understand, I, Patrick had a lot of great opportunities and he's capitalized on them where he could, like anybody else. But do I think being black and talking about, you know, LGBTQ stories had an effect? Absolutely. I know for in my own case, I don't think I got a job for like 6, 7 years after Noah's Ark went off the air because I
Wow.
was in the show. You know, one of the reasons I took control of my own career and started writing and directing stuff is because I wasn't even I mean, I wasn't getting auditions. 7 years. Because my manager and I talked about that. I didn't get a job for 7 years.
That is insane.
Not when you think about
And
not when you think about the mindset. I mean, you know, we were fighting. We came out, and actually, the second season went off the air just before the whole marriage equality movement came out. Do you know what I mean? And the
right,
whole country was
right.
divided on whether uh, gays and lesbians should have the right to marry. So you think, and then they lost. I mean, like it didn't pass. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until a presidential order. So you look at the world that we were working in. I mean, it was extraordinary that that logo even was created and we got picked up. But yeah, it had a definite
Yeah.
impact on what we could do as artists because we chose to be ourselves.
Well, that and it's interesting you said too, because I'm thinking back to those times, living in those times, and where I was, and sort of like experiencing this awakening, knowing what was going on, but also not really being deeply entrenched in it. But as a student of history, looking back and really understanding how uh, weaponized, LGBTQ issues were at that
Are
time, from
are
still are, right? But were even more so then and are becoming even more greatly so now with the current administration and this rise of, authoritarianism and fascism and whatnot. Um, it just makes me wonder, like, how much like where will we be in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years as it relates to queer LGBTQ stories, and not just like gay or lesbian, but also like more trans visibility and non-binary, right, and all the other kin that we have within the community. And as I'm bringing that up, I want to I want to go back because you did mention Noah's Ark went off, right before this movement. How did it feel to return to the world of Noah's Ark after all those years? I know you had the series and then the Jump in the Broom movie, and then you did the Rona series, the Rona Chronicles during the pandemic. But how did it feel coming back to actually film a movie? Because we were like, oh, we need Noah's Ark, and we kept trying to bully Patrick, like, give us more Noah's Ark. We want another
Yeah, but it's
series.
not up
Like,
to
are you
Patrick.
coming back?
Everybody
Yeah,
bullies Patrick, or
right.
they question us. It's never up to us. It's
Yeah,
never up to us. It's about the people with the money. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So I mean, give Patrick a break. I mean, he's never let go of this star. He's always held on to this dream. So I mean, Patrick has fought hard, but everybody's sort of like, why isn't Patrick doing X? And why isn't Patrick doing this? And why don't we have this? It's because people who control those things don't necessarily, see the value in a gay black audience. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And
And when I say bully, I mean in like a lovingly cute way.
yeah,
Like,
but
can we
yeah,
have more? Yeah,
you
yeah,
think it's loving, but it's like being poked constantly. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, yeah, everybody's asking for it, and yeah, it that it happened was extraordinary for us to get back together. I mean, you have to understand, we've known each other for. I mean, when we went back to shoot the movie, we had been a unit sort of together and apart for 18 years. I mean, Daryl and I did
Um,
three other projects together outside the sphere of Noah's Ark. And, for us to come back together, I mean, we were older. We didn't look different. And like, I remember Daryl and I had a conversation. Like, I was like, I don't know if I can hear Chance's voice anymore because
mm,
his regular speaking voice is very different from mine. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So I was like, wow, can I find that voice? And Daryl's like, I know.
mm.
Ugh. So we had little tricks, but it was like, it was some of us hadn't seen each other in 12, 13 years. It's
Wow.
not like, it's like, do you see
Yeah,
I mean, like, if you think back to a job you had in high school, do you still see those people? Right.
no. Sometimes nor do I
Well,
want to.
people think we're like a unit sometimes, but, we live in different parts of the country. Some of us live in different countries. Christian's Canadian. He has a life in Canada, and people are like, well, where's House? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, the people I used to work with, I don't see them very much, you know. But it was great to
Yeah.
come back, and there's a bond between us. I mean, we are definitely a band of brothers, and we look after each other because we had always had to look after each other.
So what was the energy like reuniting with everyone in person after so much, time apart, especially for the folks you hadn't seen in
It was weird.
years?
Like, it
Yeah.
was also, you have to understand, when we shot it, COVID had happened. Do you know what I mean? And everybody was just like, togetherness was strange in the world, but it was just like, wow, we have not seen each other. It was, you good? How are you? And then like it was like a couple days of weirdness for me,
Mhm.
and then it was just like, wow, okay, we're all back together and we're doing that thing, and the love just sort of, woof, you know, because like
I love
any
that.
brothers, we get along like a family. Like, there's the
Yeah.
the good stuff, and then there's the not good stuff. but there's a love there that keeps this thing, that keeps us wanting to go to work.
Mm.
Because if you love it, why do it for almost 20 years? If you don't love it, why do it
Yeah,
for almost 20 years? I don't care what the fans
yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah. In terms of your character, in particular, Chance, Professor Chance, did revisiting that character bring up any unexpected emotions or memories for you? I know you've been portraying that particular character for almost close to 2 decades now. So yeah, were there any unexpected emotions or memories that you personally felt revisiting that character? I know you said it was very difficult to refine that voice, to find Chance's voice, or do you still have it? But was there anything else?
I don't know if I had to do Chance right now, if I could do him. I will tell you one
Mm,
thing. We had a costume designer on this show, on the movie, who really helped me a lot because I feel like the people that designed our wardrobe for the movie got Chance in a way that had never really been understood. And
mhm,
I it was so easy once I got in his clothes to do what he needed to do, to be who he needed to be. In terms of, I mean, the memories of Chance is a construct. Do you know what I mean? He's made up of a lot of different things. But like the memories and the emotions are all about being around the table with Daryl and Christian and Rodney. I mean, my emotions about the work are tied to my relationship with the actors, not the character.
mhm. Yeah, I love that. What new layers of storytelling does the movie bring up to the Noah's Ark universe? Because I'm going to get to one of the main ones that
Well, we got to talk about it.
is very apparent. Yeah, yeah,
If we want to
uh,
talk about spoilers, we go. I mean, like if we're going to talk
yeah,
about it, I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, it's been out for 3 months. Let's
yeah,
move it on.
yeah.
Spoiler alert. Um, I think the whole fact that Chance, you know, goes through this radical life change, losing his husband, and that the audience. I mean, Patrick was really tricky about that, and
Hmm.
I kind of had to. I call it the it's the little sixth sense bubble in the middle of the movie because everybody thinks Eddie's alive, and Chance having sex with another guy, and Eddie supposedly watching, which is super awkward to shoot because there are 25 people on the other side of that bed staring at you, and then I got to hang upside down, and and I'm like, this is not, it's there's none of that is easy, or comfortable. And watching Chance go through that, I mean, I appreciate. I mean, the number of takes that were involved just in that cemetery, and what we all went through in that cemetery was
Yeah.
extraordinary.
And I will just say that watching the movie, it definitely threw me for a loop. Once I realized that Eddie had passed, and realizing that Chance was experiencing a real high level of PTSD and grief from the passing of his husband, but um, I boohooed. I boohooed when you were at that gravesite, and the rest of the girls were with you, just consoling. It showed community and friendship,
Hmm.
and just so much love. You felt like it was a very powerful scene, and we can tell that you all were channeling something like real and deep there, because I felt it watching it for the first time, and I feel it every time I watch it. Like I'm like, oh my god, I've seen this before, but let me get my tissue because I know I'm about to start crying, or let me just turn my head. I get real emotional when seeing scenes like that. But what do you hope that audiences feel or carry with them after witnessing how your character processes Eddie's passing, not just sort of that scene, but in totality.
That's a big question. Uh, but
Yeah.
but first, I want to. I mean, you one of the it's first of all, I want to give a lot of thanks to Daryl and Rodney and Christian because we spend a lot of time, just the four of us, sort of boxed together. You know what I mean? And you have to understand, like, there are hours of time for us to be together before that before we what you see on the screen. There's just waiting time. And when we shot
Mhm,
that scene, they gave me a lot of grace in that car. They really understood where I had to get to, while we were sitting in the car just waiting for that to happen. Do you know what I mean? And they are such they're consummate, they're professionals, they understood what I needed to do to where I had to get to, and they're my friends. And then they went through it with me authentically. And then by the time we shot that, I don't know, it took like an hour and a half just to shoot that scene over and over and over and over and over again. And then just to get back in the car and go away from that, they let me have the space to come out of it. I think
mhm.
one of the things that, any audience has to understand is that, like one of my acting teachers used to say, the play happens in the audience, not on stage. And at some point, we are going to face grief. A friend of mine a friend of mine, a guy I went to high school with, my friend Charlie. He was married for 40 years and his husband died suddenly 2 weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're all going to go through it. And sometimes it helps to have the example of how somebody else goes through it. And we look for that in our
Yeah,
culture. We look for that kind of representation.
yeah. And I think it also hit a little bit, you know, harder for me too because I've experienced that loss. I was engaged and I lost a partner to cancer
Mm.
in 2019. So sort of seeing that, like, it brought back up those emotions, right? You know, that grief is the ebbs and flows of grief. And I think just seeing how well it was portrayed, but also, revisiting, a very deeply traumatic and difficult moment for myself. That was, I don't know, I just resonated with it so much. So I totally understand. Um, I will also say in a story that's so rooted in joy and community, because you mentioned your castmates. What do you think the choice to include loss adds to the legacy of the series? Because there really hadn't been much. There was a sort of a spoiler at the end of the second season where we all thought Wade might be dead. But then the movie came back like, oh, they're married. um, but this was sort of, a big loss, because Eddie had been one of the, most notable characters from the first two seasons and the film.
I was just
So,
thinking about the moment
um,
Jonathan had to slap me, and I was just like, "Come on, hit me, you know, hit me." And he knocked me to the ground. Ooh,
it's a big man.
he's a tall dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what do you think?
Well, I
Uh,
mean, if you even look back to the first season, was the first no second season when Noah gets gay bashed. He gets beat up
right.
at a gas
Yeah.
station. I think, yeah, there's always the title song is Remember Love. No matter what happens, is
Hmm.
basically remember that there is love. And yeah, it's joy and it's community, but adversity shows adversity. What was it? Shirley MacLaine once said this to me: adversity reveals character. So
Yeah.
you know who you are when the poop hits the fan. And I think Patrick's
Yeah.
intention has always had, you know, a foot in the realities of what it means to be a person, you know, not just a black person or a queer person, but just a person. and you're going to face loss and fear. I mean, and if things were just, I mean, hell, Downton Abbey is like eating pudding. I love that show. I love Downton Abbey because I'm like, I don't have to think too hard. Everything's nice. Everybody has manners. But people die on Downton Abbey too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can't,
Yeah.
life is going to happen. You got to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Loss equals growth, you know?
Yeah. I love that you mentioned Downton Abbey because as soon as you said that, I started thinking about the Gilded Age. But then I'm
Oof.
like, oh wait, no,
Oh,
there's a lot going on there. You got to think, and you have to pay
I
attention,
love
and
that. But it's not that
there's
different. I love the Gilded Age.
yeah,
I love, love, love,
yeah,
love, love the Gilded Age.
yes, yes, amazing show, and I love how it ended with this latest season. So definitely looking forward to
Yeah,
the
and
next one.
I think it's remarkable that Julian
Mhm,
Fellows has created such a large black, I mean, he's looked at a section of society that most people never really think about, black or white,
mhm,
or realize that our
mhm,
answer, you know, like it's funny. I have a picture of my great great grandmother, one of my great great grandmothers, and it was taken about 1880, and on the back is his mother in her younger days. And she's probably about
mhm.
21, 22 years old. And she is dressed in the picture was taken in 1887. And she is fully dressed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. And I love
yeah,
that we don't necessarily see all of our culture, and we don't
yeah,
have all of the stories. And for
yeah.
Julian Fellows, a white British creative who gave the world Downton Abbey, you know, that maybe had, I
Mhm.
think, one major black speaking part in 7 years, has opened up this entire world for us. Good on you.
Yeah, yeah, and it also just shows to a lot of folks to again know that Black people were not sort of tethered to the narratives that have naturally been created, right? That you know, impoverished or you know, we didn't accomplish many things during that time post slavery, but to see a very well-to-do and thriving sort of society in Brooklyn, right? But also
Newport.
in Newport because I didn't know anything about Newport, and I mean I'm researching and looking up everything I can now about
Well,
Newport, Rhode
look at
Island.
Fire Island.
Um, yeah, well,
There's,
yeah,
Fire Island, Newport, and Martha's Vineyard.
Martha
But
Vineyard. Yep,
one of the things that
yep.
happens on the Gilded Age is that whole thing with Felicia Rashad, being proud of the fact that that
Hmm.
her family had been free for a while. Trust me, Felicia, nobody got to the United States free. Black people didn't
Right.
emigrate from Africa. Do you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
mean, they were free for a while, like, but I live in the deep South. And I remember actually in the 80s, I picked up a book when I was living in Boston called Feast of All Saints, which was written by Anne Rice under a pseudonym, under a nom
Mhm.
de plume. And it was about free black people living in New Orleans in the 1830s. And I didn't realize that had been a huge culture. And then I found out once I moved down here that I had free black ancestors living in New Orleans
Mm.
in the 1830s. And also, they owned slaves. Black people own slaves. Free black people own
Oh,
slaves. And my
yep.
ancestors, my black ancestors in New Orleans owned slaves, which you gotta like, okay, all right, yeah, okay, all right, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being
The
black in this
the
country
show
is
does
complicated.
always, and I believe it forever will be. Just anywhere in the world these days. And I think the show does a really good job at touching upon a lot of those issues. You mentioned Felicia Rashad. She played that role a little too well because I was side eyeing her for multiple weeks after. I'm like, oh, girl, you are you're the rent was due
Yeah, yeah.
because yeah. But in terms of, sort of timepieces and generations and whatnot, how do you think this film, Noah's Ark, speaks to a new generation of queer and Black viewers who may not have grown up with the series? Because there are some younger folks who, I know, and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't watch it," or "I'm watching it for the first time. I didn't know about it." And I'll be like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing this weekend?" We're watching the Noah's Ark movie. We're having a little watch party. Like, "Oh, I've never seen that." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you're Gen Z, like, you were born in 2000, you probably didn't grow up on it, but, how do you think this film speaks to them?" Because there were some moments, right, like, where you all introduced some things that are very are a lot, uh, I think, different from the original series, right? Like, with, um, um, Alex and Trey's, daughter, right? Being trans, right? Like that obviously drag culture and some ballroom were mentioned, but the added sort of layer of trans visibility within the show with this. So how do you think this film speaks to this new generation of queer and Black viewers?
Well, you know, here's how I'll answer that question. I have, I grew up when I did. Do you know what I mean? I
Mm,
grew up in I grew up in another century, basically. And I don't know what the real world perspective is on all of what you're talking about from a younger generation. I can't imagine what the world looks like to them. Just the same way as my parents who
mm,
were born in the 1920s could not imagine. I mean, my dad's like, I can't imagine your life, because it was my life in my 20s and 30s was unimaginable to my father in his 20s and 30s. Do you
mm,
understand what I mean? So I can't tell that. What does occur to me is that as long as there are so few stories, it's probably going to be kind of a how-to guide to get older as a queer Black man, and what life looks like and what it feels like, and like, oh yeah, in 2005, yeah, you did have a 28-inch waist. In 2025, you have a 33, 34-inch waist. you know in 2004, in your 20s and 30s, yeah, the world was, you could get drunk and screw whoever you want to. In 20 years, you're going to have a husband who may or may not be present, the relationship, and you might have a child and a mortgage and a business. Do you know what I mean? It's like we're kind of, if you sort of, if you use Noah's Ark as like a flip book, like this is how we are in different stages of our life, and this is what you might be going through.
mm. I love that. Do you feel the industry has caught up with what Noah's Ark started, or is there still a very long way to go?
W- Uh, in Started in how do you mean that? In what sense?
So, Noah's Ark started really for a lot of Black queer individuals. It really was our first sort of show with real representation for what it meant to be Black and queer, right? Um, and it taught us a lot. There were a lot of lessons, right? Even it's like, with Alex running the clinic, right? Or Janito coming in and talking about, getting tested, and just a lot of like how to navigate relationships, as a queer individual, what it meant to, be a little bit more free, right? So I think you all started that with the show. Um, and do you think the industry has
Well,
caught up?
let me
Or is
ask you
there
a question, and you can
yeah,
probably, and you'll find
yeah.
your answer in this. Since Noah's Ark, the series went off the air, how many shows can you think of that have had more than two Black gay characters
Quite a few.
at the same time?
Oh, at the same time? No, not
Right.
at the same time, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
like there would be probably a main black gay character who will have a love interest. Sometimes they're black, but they're never the story's not about them. They are
Hmm.
secondary characters. But can you name me a show that's had more than one or two black main characters who the story was about?
I can't think
Right.
of
So
any off
there's
the
your
top.
answer. There's your answer. So no, no.
I would, I would definitely have to do some deep research and go into the deep cuts, but yeah, I can't think of any
Right.
off
You
the
guys
top.
are
So yeah,
any other
yeah.
shows you guys are having watch parties to celebrate, that celebrate gay black life?
No, unless we're sitting around watching
That's no
Beyonce.
no 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 no. But you and
I'm joking. Yeah, I
yeah.
know what you
So
mean,
that
but
answers
yeah,
your question.
yeah,
The answer is no.
yeah, yeah. Well, all right. um, let's switch to talking a little bit about you.
What do you want to know?
what or, what originally drew you to acting, and what keeps you in it
Uh
after all?
when well, my mother and I had different stories. So when I was about 4, they sent me to watch the Nutcracker ballet. And my mom and I actually kind of have a memory of this coming home like super excited, grabbing my mother, sitting her on the couch in the living room, and then proceeding to dance the entire Nutcracker for her for the next 2 hours. And she said that she always said that's when she knew. Um, I
Mm,
think about the Christmas play when I was 7 in my elementary school and wanting to be a tin soldier and didn't get that part. Carl Artis got that part, and I still remember that. And I was like third shepherd from the right. You know what I mean? But I remember what it was like to be on that stage. And I remember
yeah.
what it was like to have those colored lights and to be slightly elevated from the audience. And I was like, ooh, this is good.
Yeah.
And I also remember like watching being about 7 years old and watching The Wizard of Oz and thinking I could be a flying monkey. I've always, I mean, I was raised as an only child because my brother was 24 years older than me. And I mean,
Mm,
and I played a lot by myself, and I have an incredible imagination, and my parents gave me a lot of toys to play with. And I was lucky, I got Barbies and football stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like I had everything. I still have Barbies. Um, I'm not kidding, I still have Barbies. And
I love
um,
that.
and being an actor is about playing. It's still me playing on the floor by myself. It's still me going into my
Hmm.
mom's clothes and playing dress up. It's all of that stuff. I love it. I love it. And, and I love it on stage way more than, I mean, acting on stage is a lot more fun than acting in a movie or on TV. Because, I mean, once you get on the train on stage, you do not get off. And it's like you're in a high
Mm,
wire act. And like on a set, you could do a scene 30, 40 times. And you're like, oh my God. I once
mm.
yelled at Patrick. I yelled at Patrick in the first season. We were standing on a staircase in the Catch One on a Saturday afternoon, and Patrick was like, "Let's do it again." I'm like, "Patrick, what do you want?" Like, I can do it on a pony. I can do it on a pony and a hoop. I can do it with a pony and a poodle and a hoop. I can do it with a pony and a poodle and a hoop on fire. I can do it underwater. What do you want? Do you know what I mean? Like you just keep doing the same thing over and
Right.
over again until they hear what you want they want. But I love it. I love all of it. I love the costuming. I love working with the people. I love the lights.
I often hear a lot of actors say that they love theater much more than doing like the movies or uh, the or TV. So it's always fun to hear that because I'm a theater fan, and I love just good writing.
Hmm.
So So yeah, it's always very interesting to hear when actors do say that they love the theater
Well,
over film. I
there's
very
an
rarely see it.
immediacy, and there's a relationship with the audience, and sometimes they're super close to you. And, like, when you're shooting a movie or you're on, like, if you're looking out, there might be somebody on their phone, somebody's eating a sandwich, some people are moving props. Do you know what I mean? Like, that audience is like, you did a good job in a movie when the crew's like, "Yeah, that was good. Well done. I like that." But they're busy doing some shit. You know what I mean? And sorry, I think I swore. Um,
It's
and
fine.
but an audience is right there and they're with you, and it's like you got them or you don't got them, and that's horrible. And stuff goes wrong. Like, oops, that prop, my wardrobe just came undone or something. Like, my favorite parts are always the things that I do on stage, because as an actor, you get to do more. You get to play parts on stage you would never be allowed to. I get to play parts on stage I would never be allowed to play on screen.
Mhm. So I do want to talk about what's happening right now as well in the country and sort of how it's connected to art and our responsibility as artists and um in whatever sort of vein you produce art, whether it be writing, acting, music, um painting, uh and we're living in sort of a time of rising authoritarianism, and there's this anti queer backlash. How does that shape the way you approach your work today? And what do you feel is the responsibility of queer artists right
Well,
now?
artists, queer artists, I don't I think you can take the adjective off the qualifier off the word artist. I believe we you just art is above politics because it's always personal, and it's something that comes through you. I always say that I am the lantern, I'm not the light. The light is the thing that energizes me and says, this is the thing that you need to be involved in. This is the work that you need to create. And, as somebody, I lived through Nixon. I lived through Reagan. I lived through the AIDS crisis. I lived through Vietnam. You know what I mean? And people have always used whatever period of time they're living in to create, either in spite of it or because of it. And I think as an artist, if you call yourself an artist, draw, write, sketch, paint, write a play, do a play. You know what I mean? And I think for those people who are using this as a springboard to create art, you always have to look at the parallels. You always look at and if you're trained the way I was, you're a student of history. Because I think any artist has to be a sociologist, a historian, a psychologist, an anthropologist, a you have to understand context. So creating this stuff in the context of the world that we live in isn't that different from Arthur Miller writing The Crucible in the 1950s to talk about McCarthyism. History
Mhm.
repeats itself. We are living in Rome at the end of Julius Caesar's at the end of the Republic, at the beginning of the Empire. To me, that's where we are. I'm
Mhm.
looking at this. You look at history when Rome went from being a republic to, the imperial system under the command of one person. That's kind of what it feels like to me. Or France, when there was a revolution and there was like liberty, equality, fraternity, and then Napoleon comes in and it's an empire again with one person in charge. I think we're seeing history repeat itself. And because of that, there's always going to be some creativity. There's always going to be a need for a voice. It's going to happen. You will never shut it out. I mean, as long as the universe loves balance. So you'll get an authoritarian government and you'll get Banksy. You'll get street art. You know, Human beings have had a need to express how they feel in some three-dimensional form. I don't know, since somebody got chased into a cave by a bear. Do you know what I mean? Like, We will. I
Yeah.
mean, the Romans and Egyptians wrote political graffiti on the walls of their buildings. If you go to Pompeii, you can see that.
Right.
We will always, always voice what we need to voice, create what we need to create.
Yeah. And that really just takes me to thinking about one of my favorite Toni Morrison quotes, where she says, "All good art is political. There's none of it that isn't, and the ones that try hard not to be political are political by saying we love the status quo." And I think right now, to your point, you know, anything that we create, uh, you know, sort of put out there is in some way a political statement.
She's right. Art,
If I'm right, if I,
all
yeah,
art is
yeah,
advertising. All art is advertising. You have to understand art. The tradition of art comes from cultures that were predominantly not literate. So you needed to have some kind of visual representation. I said, this is how I think. This is what we believe in. This is our God. This is our philosophy. This is what we do. And then there's always been some people on the other side are like, well, I don't really believe that. This is what I think. Do you know what I mean? All art is political.
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
there's especially in the last 100 years, Andy Warhol soup
yeah,
cans are political. You know, pop art is political. Music is political. It's either for somebody or against somebody.
yeah, yeah. And I would even go further. It's like, as artists, there is a duty, and I'm a huge advocate for this, as artists, to develop a politic that you can express. You may not be someone who's out there on the front lines and, at the marches, or in a state house or down in Congress, protesting, but writing a poem where, about two black men loving each other, that's political. Or a mural about refugees, right? Fleeing their homeland is political as well.
But
So,
and
um,
there's also a
uh,
need to make people feel better and feel
yes,
good and feel safe.
yes,
So yeah, you might have there's a place for all of it. There are people who are completely apolitical. They just want to paint pictures of flowers. And you know what? Somebody's going to need to see a picture of flowers every once in a while.
yeah, that's very true. That, and there's a special place, I think. Well, I wouldn't say a special place, but a place that is really needed for the truth tellers right now, right? Like in art. And I think even like the movie, right, is, most people may not see it as political, but there are tons of political undertones, like from the movie, that we see. There's an attack on drag queens right now, right? And the visibility of drag queens and trans, like, influencing, like, T.S. Madison in the movie. And you know Alex's character sort of navigate and sort of just say F the binary, right? You're gonna get you're gonna get all of me. I think those things are important as well, in a special place. But I do want to also ask, I know we have a little bit of time
Wait,
left.
before you ask me a question, I need to
Yeah.
say something. Um, everybody thinks here's the deal. Everybody, so I learned a lesson as an actor from a coach I had back in the early '90s. I was doing a Shakespeare monologue by a guy who's the bad guy in Othello, and she said, and I was, villain, and she said, no, 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 no villain thinks he's the bad guy. They're doing what they think out of
Hmm.
love. They're telling their truth. So the problem is we have to understand that everybody has a truth, whether we agree with that or not. They're thinking that, like this whole thing with people lionizing Charlie Kirk. From their perspective, they think they're right. They think they're telling the truth. I mean, that's the problem with what's going on in this country and the world, is everybody thinks I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. And it's just a matter of perspective. And everybody, it's if we could sort of settle down the extremism and get to someplace in the middle where like your opinion is okay, don't fucking hurt anybody, you know. And I think there's a rise in violence that's happening because everybody's telling their truth from such a rigid place. Do you know what I mean?
Truth lowercase t, and um, not really being armed with facts a
Yeah,
lot of
but
the
but
time, right?
but see, the
Because there
facts are
there's
only the facts for the person saying them. What we've discovered is that you could say anything and somebody's going to believe it.
well, we could also say too, like, the sky is blue, right? That's a fact, right? Like, if I look up at the sky and I see the sky is blue, like, that's a fact. There's really no debating sort of that
People
point,
debate the
right?
fact.
But there may
People
be
debate the
people,
fact that the world
but
is
there will be
flat.
people.
We're still having
Oh,
that discussion.
definitely, right?
And
Exactly,
also, to tie it
exactly.
back to Noah's Ark, I had a real
Yeah.
discussion with a guy in a bar here, a black gay man in a bar in New Orleans 3 years ago that I will never forget. And he was pissed about Noah's Ark because he had watched it as a kid and he thought that was how his life was going to turn out. And he didn't have those black friends. He didn't have that job. I mean, the reason I was talking to him is
Mhm.
he was dancing on the bar in front of me. And he's like, I know you. And I was like, yeah, you probably, okay. And and then we went out for coffee and we talked. And he's like, yeah, that was, Noah's Ark was not his experience. And he was pissed about it.
Mm,
He felt like Noah's Ark had been a promise that wasn't fulfilled in his life. So it's about perspective.
yeah, I hear you. So, I love this. I love this discussion. I feel like I can talk to you for a much longer time on just this topic alone. Um, what is one question you wish people asked you more often about your work, other than like Noah's Ark, right? Like, you're obviously known for Noah's Ark, but like, what is something else you wish people would know you for, would know Doug Spearman
Come see
for?
a play I'm in.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could
Yeah.
think of. Over the 20 some years, I've been asked about everything. Um, but I mean, well, I don't think it's a question. What I would, what if somebody's a fan of Noah's Ark, I'd really like them to ask me a question about like, how are you different from Chance? Because a lot of times people assume
Mm,
that's who I am,
mhm.
and Chance and I are very different people and would make
Yeah.
very different. And part of the issue with playing Chance is like I don't agree with a lot. I didn't agree with a lot of his life choices. I'm like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. So how do I make it? How do I make it so? And just don't
Yeah.
assume that like a lot of times fans will say, I'm you in our friend group. I'm like, are you me or are you Chance? And they're like, I'm the Chance. And I'm like, you should lighten up because he's a little uptight. So, you know,
I've been accused. I've been accused of being a chance at a certain period in my life. Not there anymore, but I was once the chance of the friend group. Um, but not anymore. Um, okay, this has been amazing. So I want to do one last thing with you before we close out. I want to open up a little segment that I have. It's called "What's the Tea?" This is sort of rapid fire questions. There'll be 5 of them, and just sort of your answer. So what is the tea? What's the one film that shaped how you see storytelling?
one,
One.
I don't even know how to answer. How I see storytelling. I'll say All About Eve.
All About Eve. Okay. If you could have dinner with any Black queer cultural icon, past or present, who would it be?
Langston Hughes.
Mm. What's a book you think everyone should read at least once in their life?
The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay.
Okay. Which song or album always brings you back to a specific moment in your
In
career?
my career,
Hmm.
you're uh, Don't You Wish Your Girlfriend Was Hot Like Me? Because
The
yeah, the
Pussycat.
Pussycat Dolls, because when we were shooting the first season of Noah's Ark, Christian played that in the makeup trailer every goddamn day. And I every time I hear it, I think about sitting exactly where I am and the heat in the trailer and Christian down there dancing. Yeah, like every time I hear it, it's one of the song. It's the song that I most associate with Noah's Ark.
That is so funny because every time I hear that song, I think of that song. I can go back to one movie, and it's Norbit, the Eddie Murphy movie with the character Rasputia, because that's her
Mm.
favorite song. So when you said that, I busted out laughing in my head. That is funny. What's the cultural shift you hope to see in Hollywood in the next 10 years?
That actors are still employed.
Amen.
No, because AI is
the
good. They don't need us.
the videos that I see with the little kids and the older folks and all these things, the conversations that folks are making up is kind
Yeah,
of scary.
I hope we all have
Yeah,
jobs.
it's kind of
I
scary.
hope the industry
Yeah,
actually exists.
yeah, yeah. Well, Doug, you've been amazing. I've enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I can talk to you for hours and hours more about art and politics and Noah's Ark and Black queer things and the Pussycat Dolls and just theater. So I just want to thank you so
You're welcome.
much uh, from the bottom of my heart. This has been an experience for me, sort of a full circle moment. As like I said, Noah's Ark was a part of my queer awakening, and to be sitting with and talking to you, who really shaped a lot of that, your character, is just like wow, like this is dope. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for just talking to Gay Magazine. We are definitely trying to create a space to where, you know, the gays and the days and everyone in between really gets to experience the culture and is updated on news and entertainment. And I think these moments are always just so beautiful to have these conversations with folks like yourself. So I
Thank you
appreciate
very
you.
much for having me.
Thank you.